Hi, my name is Patricia McClellan Terrell, and I write under the pen name PM Terrell. This video is for authors and is part of the Novel Business series. How long has it been since you identified your ideal target audience? Your ideal reader is the person who is absolutely passionate about what you write. They're looking precisely for your work. They devour every page that you've written. They identify with one or more of your characters. They love placing themselves into the setting, whether it's the country, the era, or the plot of what you've written. They go even further than loving your work. They go into recommending your book to others, asking for your local libraries or their local libraries to carry your books. They write reviews about your books, and they help to spread the word. Your ideal reader can never be painted with a broad brush. Your writing contains nuances. Personality jumps out with every page. It's a portrait of life, a snapshot of life on every single page, in every scene you write. Not every woman is going to identify with your writing. Not every man alive is going to identify with your writing. Not every person of any age. And yet I hear this time and time again from authors, that every woman of every age will love my work. Every man of every age will love my work. But you only need to look at the bestseller list, the New York Times or Los Angeles bestseller list, USA Today bestseller list, or even those on Amazon, to know that certain books appeal to you and certain books simply do not. It doesn't mean that the writing is lacking. It just simply means that it's not your cup of tea. But we as authors often forget that readers are individuals. And we can't paint this broad brush and say that this is our ideal audience. You should identify who your ideal target reader is throughout your career. Sometimes it's obvious that you're reaching into a different demographic. For example, if you write adult books, say suspense thrillers, and then you segue into young adult novels, or children's books, or nonfiction. But often our audience changes in more subtle ways. For example, you might have begun by writing cozies, and they may have been very light, and you might have become edgier over time, so that your books actually morphed from a cozy into perhaps harder suspense. You might have added characters from different cultures, different nationalities, or you might have brought your own characters, if you're in a series, for example, to various places around the world. Each place that they go to can actually tap into a different demographic. You might begin to add more romance to your books. Perhaps some of your books had absolutely no romance at all. Some of them might have had some light flirtatious scenes in them. And then you wrote this book that suddenly changed into something a lot more sexual in nature. That changes your demographic. That alone, by the way, can change it from an older audience to a younger audience, which means that your marketing must change to that which the younger audiences are expecting. You could also be tapping into different markets if you change the backdrop of your books. If it's set against a particular war or against particular cultures. And if you add elements that have not been found in any of your other books. For example, if you write suspense thrillers and you have a book that comes out that has a medical technology theme to it, or political suspense, or a detective, and you morph from the amateur detective into someone who is working as a detective or an investigator as their career. All of these things change your demographics, and if you don't assess your audience with every single book that you put out, then you could continue marketing to the wrong audience and not even realize it. Your book sales could begin to decline. Those who were avid readers may stop reading your work, and you may not really know why. It's possible that by changing just one aspect of your writing, you've left your previously defined target market, and your marketing did not. An example is found with John Grisham's book, A Painted House. Now, this was originally published in hardcover in 2001, and Grisham's suspense was, every suspense he was writing was on the bestseller list. It was extremely popular, and they were being made into movies, like the Pelican Brief, The Firm, and others. Initial reviews of A Painted House were not kind because the book was not suspense. It didn't take place in the current era, and it wasn't a thriller. And the audiences that he had courted over the years were expecting suspense. The book itself was excellently written. It was inspired by John Grisham's own childhood growing up in Arkansas, and it became one of it is my favorite book of all of the Grisham books, because I could identify with the Chandler family, having spent some time in the Deep South. The reviews eventually did catch up with the excellence of the writing, and it was because the marketing campaign actually changed. Instead of just simply going after those readers that had loved his suspense, the marketing campaign morphed into something that tapped into markets that were looking for more of the type of book that A Painted House was, which was set in the 1940s. Other times, the changes in writing can be even more spectacular. For example, an author, I'm not going to mention her name because this is not negative what I'm saying, and I never say anything negative about another person and mention their name. But one of what used to be one of my favorite authors wrote an absolutely fabulous series that was set in Ireland. And it had elements of time travel to it. And if you are a fan of Diana Gabaldon's Outlander, this series was very similar to Outlander in the fact that it began in the present day, or actually began in World War II, at the end of World War II, but then it went back a couple of hundred years. And while this series didn't go back that far, there was that element of time travel and of place, from the United States to Ireland in the past. Well, I was eagerly awaiting her next book, and I recommended that series to so many people. I did reviews on it. I mentioned it on social media. I told people that followed me that they would just absolutely love her writing. And then her next book came out, and it was gay porn. Now, there's nothing wrong with gay porn, but with that book, she left me behind, and she left all of my friends and all the people that I had recommended her to behind. She left her target market, and she might have started a brand new target market, but it was as if she had started completely from scratch, and she had never had anything published, because the book, the series of books that she did after that was completely different. She then changed again to werewolves and vampires and shapeshifters, and in retrospect, looking back, I see where she was changing what she was writing based on what was popular at the time. Outlander, is extremely popular, bestseller list, so she was writing time travel, and instead of Scotland, sending them to Ireland. Gay porn became big, and so she jumped on that bandwagon. And then True Blood and Twilight, were huge, so she jumped on the werewolves and vampires and shapeshifters. The problem was that with each change that she made, and there were such spectacular changes, that she left her previous market behind and had to get a whole new market. And over time, she went with being with a New York Times, New York publisher, one of the big New York publishers, to smaller publishers, and now she's self-published. And if she had stuck with one genre, she could have possibly retained that audience that she had been building. There's nothing wrong with writing in multiple genres, but it should be part of a concerted effort. It should be part of the author looking at their long-term career goals. It requires almost a crystal ball of looking forward to what are you going to be in 5 years from now? What are you going to be in 10 years from now, 20 years from now? When you die, your books will live on. So what legacy are you looking at having with your writing? When you change from one genre to the other, it should be part of a concerted effort in which the author is involved, the publisher, and the entire marketing team. Everybody knows moving forward that you could possibly be leaving one target market behind and beginning with another. If you have written in a variety of genres, you should establish a separate marketing plan for each genre, establishing each audience as a separate set or subset. The author name becomes a brand in which the audience expects certain things. You remember when Coca-Cola decided to change their formula, and everyone just completely rebelled. So they had to come out with Coca-Cola Classic. Well, unfortunately, readers don't usually tell us why they stopped reading our books. They simply do, and they simply just kind of fade away. The reviews become less frequent, and people aren't recommending your books anymore, so it's up to the author to figure out why. When changing our writing, we need to be prepared to replace those that we're leaving with those that we're gaining. And in order to make a change, especially a spectacular change, we really need to have more of a gain than we do a loss. For example, if your current target market, you feel like you're tapping out with, 10,000 sales, for each title, or 50,000 sales for each title, whatever the magic number is to you, then you need to at least be doubling that when you're changing genres. There has to be some some reason, compelling reason for you to make such a dramatic transition in your own career. So I'm asking you today, who are you writing for? And how has your audience changed over time? If you want to know more about how to define your target market, there's a 52-step plan that I have with the Novel Business. It's on my website, thenovelbusiness.com, and you'll see it under marketing. This plan actually goes through identifying who your target market is, even if you have absolutely no clue. I also wrote about it in an issue of Southern Writers magazine, which was released in July of 2018. And, or let's see, it might be, that's when I wrote it. So it might be coming out in August or September of 2018. And that's Southern Writers magazine. But you need to know how to define your target market, and you need to continuously define it with every single book that you write. If you enjoyed this video, please watch more of my videos on the Novel Business playlist, and like this video and subscribe to my channel. And you can find out more about me as the writer at pmterrell.com, and more about the Novel Business, especially for authors, at thenovelbusiness.com. Thanks.